This morning in the West, I've written a couple of stories in relation to centering on one website, just one website, which was selling a product called Wicked Powder, all dressed up as cocaine, refers to it as being the strongest legal high you'll ever get in Australia. It's, the synthetic drug issue. We've heard enough about the synthetic drug issue to know that it claims lives, that people don't know what they're using, and the results can be horrendous, okay? People have lost loved ones, and my next guest has lost a loved one, his own son, because of this stuff. So you think about, well, they've changed the laws over here, they've reversed the onus of proof now, it's on the people that might be selling synthetic drugs, they've got to prove that it's not a psychostimulant. That makes it difficult for them to try and market it through their shops, etc. So all that's been done, it's all great, but it's not hard to just click on a website and away you go and order it. That's what I did. After I'd spoken to Rod Bridge, we went through the process of seeing how easy it would be, and with a few clicks, I'd ordered 50 grams of the stuff. It was $400. I had a bank account, the whole lot, to send money to. And you think, well, this was within Australia, and that was the interesting point. This was operating in Australia by an Australian. Rod Bridge, for those that don't know the story, lost his son Preston to synthetic drugs in 2013, and he's been campaigning ever since to try and shut down some of the loopholes, change some of the laws, and he's had some success, and shut down some of these websites. And Rod joins me on the line now. G'day, Rod.
Yeah, good morning, Gary. How are you?
Now, the backstory here is that you'd been contacted by a parent who was concerned about their own child who had an issue with synthetic drugs, and they talked about this website to you.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it was after a presentation that we did that I got contacted by a mother whose son had become an addict on this synthetic cannabis. So I got the details from her, went onto the web, and lo and behold, looked it up, and there it was. And, for sale within Australia. So it was a bit of a shock to me. Yeah,
that was the thing. A lot of this stuff, is websites registered overseas, run from people overseas, and they're literally just a mailing agent. They'll post it into you. If it makes it through border protection, then all well and good for the people buying it. But this was in Australia, and they actually boasted how they have all their stuff delivered by Australia Post.
Yeah, that's correct. It was quite fascinating. It was as simple as just ordering it online, paying money into a bank account using a BSB number, and it was delivered within 3 to 4 days. And it was quite a shock.
The product, obviously, you've seen the website before. We'll get to it in a second. It was closed down, but they, they dressed it up, didn't they, to look like the real gear, and they talk about how strong it is.
Yeah, and compare it to other synthetic cannabinoids that are on the market. So it was. This is something that they advertise not for human consumption, but reality
exactly.
is. Looking at the website, it was pretty obvious that it was for a recreational party drug.
Exactly. In the white powder form that this Wicked came in as well, they would talk about it being not for human consumption, but then 3 paragraphs below it talks about how you could mix it with liquid and drink it. Okay, so it's just outrageous. So we move forward to. I then started the process as well of ordering it, spoke to, eventually got a name of a person who was behind the website, tried to contact them, had no joy, but I left my message with them, Rod, saying, I'm from the West Australian newspaper and I'd like to speak to them. Within 15 minutes, that website was gone. Now the point there is
under construction or
under maintenance, and the point there is, and I know your frustration is, well, if it was easy for you and I to get those wheels in motion, authorities need to do more.
Yeah, of course. Look, I mean, you obviously know that or aware of my little trip to China.
Yeah.
Since my trip over there, the Chinese government have now banned 116 different substances from being manufactured. So, it's obvious that this stuff is deadly and powerful, and I just can't believe that we have a company here in Australia that's advertising the research chemicals for sale and delivered to your door. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
The gentleman I spoke to has a legitimate business, which, as I've alluded to in the newspaper today, actually does do website marketing for some of the biggest retail stores in the country. And maybe that's why he ran a mile when we highlighted Wicked. What do you think of people like this, Rod, that will bring this stuff in and gamble with people's lives?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, they're nothing but drug dealers. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, the problem with the research chemical business here is that the raw chemicals are purchased from China and they're delivered into Australia, and then you have people here manufacturing the product. They're either selling it as raw chemical or a finished product. And, you know, we've talked about this before, and there is no quality control. There's no dosage amount. So, you know, the public out there are buying this product having absolutely no idea how to take it or what to do with it. So it's just bizarre, just absolutely bizarre.
The thing about it, as you pointed out to me, is, you know, this is a company that was operating in Australia with a BSB and a bank account number in Queensland. It'd be nice to see them sort of taken down by asset seizure and that sort of thing, wouldn't it?
Well, it would be. Look, I mean, you know, these research chemicals or these substances have been banned. I mean, they are an illegal product to sell or to have in your possession. So, you know, the reality is I can't understand why the law enforcement agencies can't just step in and go, right, you know, you're conducting illegal activity, seize their assets, and then find out where the products are coming from. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
It's almost low-hanging fruit, to be honest. It wasn't that hard to find this bloke.
No, well, I mean, it's as simple as if you can use the keyboard, there it is.
All right, just tell people, I know that you've got a project that's up and running now where you're visiting schools and you're doing as much as you can to spread the word about the hidden dangers here. Just tell people about that. Yeah, well, you know, we formed this after Preston's death, a foundation called Side Effect. So what we are doing is we're taking a mobile bus to locations like high schools and shopping centres, and we're doing a video presentation on the bus. And this is, you know, this is for the benefit to really show people what these products are made of and the reasons why you keep away from them and what the outcomes will be. So we're negotiating with the government now to get some funding and corporate people to finish the bus off. So, you know, we're ready to rock and roll, and so hopefully we'll be out there like the end of May or beginning of June. All right, good stuff, Rod. Thanks very much for talking to us about this.
Yeah,
that's all we can do is bring it to people's attention.
And well done, mate. It was good. That's just another site that's decided to disappear.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty more. But, you know, a few phone calls, and if you can close down a site, well, make it harder. That's the main thing. That's all we can do, really, is make it harder.
Yeah, that's all we can do, mate.
All right, thanks for that. Rod Bridge there. He's a campaigner now against the synthetic drug craze that's out there now.
You're listening to Gary Edshead on 6PR, the voice of Perth.
Yeah, welcome back. We're talking about synthetic drugs and the websites that peddle the stuff and the merchants that are behind it. Well, Curtin University's Stephen Bright has penned a particularly good research paper. It's all about prevention research in relation to this area, new and emerging drugs. He's an expert in this field. Stephen Bright joins me on the line. Thanks very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, now, look, there's no doubt that it's pretty easy to go to the computer and find a website where I can buy research chemicals or synthetic cannabis. Should that still be the case, given the fact that, you know, laws have changed now?
Well, in fact, there has been 40 legislative changes in Australia since the first change in Western Australia in 2011. And has it made a difference? Not really. There has been a decrease in the availability in people being able to access some of these products from brick and mortar stores, but it hasn't had much impact on sites such as you refer to.
What do you can I get your impression of the people who are behind these sites, like this Wicked High.com that we're talking about? What do you think of those people that are actively making money out of products that they don't really know what's in them and don't really care too much about the health of people?
Well, they're clearly entrepreneurial individuals with a lack of any ethics, because the chemicals contained in these products, we have very little idea of what the acute toxicity might be, whether they are neurotoxic, carcinogenic, and we're not going to find out this information for another 20 years or so, really. What's happened with the emergence of these new drugs, and they have emerged as a consequence of people getting around the law or people wanting to avoid drug tests, with the rapid emergence of these new drugs, the way we run medical research is that we first give the new drug that's developed to animals to determine how toxic they are. Then we run phase 1 clinical trials where we get a small number of humans who are paid a lot of money to test the drug on humans to make sure that they're safe. Then we do phase 2 trials to start looking at whether they're actually effective in what they're doing. And then phase 3 multi-site studies. With these rapidly emerging new drugs, what we've seen is the whole thing's been flipped around. The cart's been put before the horse. And so now the people are becoming the lab rats taking these drugs. We then identify that these drugs are on the market, and then we give them to the rats. So, you know, in terms of people who are taking these drugs, they're really lab rats.
But you have a sense that, the prohibition that is increasing, if you like, because of the changes in laws and the onus of proof laws that we have in Western Australia, for example, you're saying it ain't working, prohibition's not working.
Look, it's not working. A colleague of mine, Dr. David Caldecott, is calling what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years the vortex of doom regarding prohibition. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different effect. What we need to do is have a rethink about drug policy. We really need to start thinking outside the box, and we can do that by looking at what other countries have put into place, and we can also do that by, hypothesising about what other strategies might be effective.
You obviously have a view. Rod Bridge, he's a father who is trying to do something to stop other people going the way of his son who died because they tried synthetic drugs and it went horribly wrong.
Yep.
What would you say to him?
I would say that if we looked at alternative models, such as the regulation of psychoactive substances that have a lower potential for harm, such as LSD or MDMA, then people like his son may be still alive because they would have been able to access a pure quality controlled version of LSD. Look, they probably would have got their hands on it because it wouldn't be available to people under the age of 21 or under the age of 18 or something like that, just like, the 16-year-olds and the 15-year-olds get their hands on the booze.
Yeah.
But I would say his son would still be alive. But that's one end of the spectrum. In New Zealand, they've had a very interesting experiment where what they did was they regulated the legal high products. And it was a tremendous success. What they saw was no more new drugs emerging. And what they also were able to do was have quality control. People had to have licenses to sell illegal highs. They had to have there were specifications over the packaging of them, like they had to have information about how to correctly dose, information about who to contact if something goes wrong. They weren't allowed to be pretty looking. They were plain packaged, like plain packaged cigarettes. And during that...
Yeah, I was going to say, doesn't that mean, though, that the government and society, therefore, just goes into the drug game, the synthetic drug game, the standard drug game? Is that the way we want to go? Where we throw our hands up and say, we can't stop anything, so let's get into the business.
Well, look, let's look at the facts when it comes to the war on drugs and prohibition. Since being implemented in the late 1960s, drugs have only become cheaper and more available. And do you know who's making all the money out of it? The cartels.
Yeah.
If the government were to take the approach like New Zealand did, and I don't necessarily recommend that as approach, because what they did was actually just regulate the new alternative drugs rather than the traditional illegal drugs, and they only licensed a few drugs that were able to be sold. But that was a fantastic way of stopping all of these new drugs emerging. An alternative model is the Portugal model. What Portugal did in 2001 is that they decriminalised the personal possession of illegal drugs. And what that did is freed up a whole lot of money that's being spent on prosecuting the low-hanging fruit, and they put that money into treatment and into social integration. So in Portugal, if you get caught with some heroin, you go before a tribunal where they determine whether or not you have a drug problem. If they determine you have a drug problem, then you are compelled to enter treatment, where they have amazing treatment services, that so far better than what Australia has. But the key is they then give incentives to employers to provide employment to people coming out of the treatment centres after 12 months, and it helps these people reintegrate in society. So Portugal's been a tremendous success. They've got one of the lowest drug use rates in the European Union, and most importantly, because of the decriminalisation of the drugs there, they're able to spend a lot more money on prevention, and their prevention is world class. It's far better than what we're doing in Australia. In Australia, 66% of our money goes towards law enforcement, 21% goes towards treatment, 9% goes towards prevention, and 2 or 3% goes towards harm reduction. What Portugal have done is flip that around. So 66% of the money goes into treatment and rehabilitation and prevention, and the rest of the money goes into law enforcement, focusing on prosecuting the big drug cartels.
All right, Stephen, well, like you said, it's an emerging drug, still an emerging problem. Maybe we need to rethink it. I do appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. We need to start thinking outside of the box. We need to look at what other countries are doing, and maybe even Australia could come up with an innovative solution and be a world leader in addressing this issue.
Thanks for your time. So, he's saying, and he's done a lot of research in this area, we aren't winning this war. We aren't stopping these websites. We're not preventing the merchants from being able to sell this to our kids, or to anyone for that matter, because enough of it will get in through the post. He's saying the prohibition scenario has not worked and we need to change tack. In other words, the government essentially needs to get into the synthetic drug game as well as the more traditional drugs, because that way you at least save lives. People don't go down paths into the black market in order to get something that they want. What do you think about that? This is something that's very difficult for us in Western Australia to comprehend, that essentially we throw up our hands and say we ain't winning, so let's regulate, not make illegal these type of synthetic drugs. I'd love to get your view on that. It's a very controversial thing. It is happening in other parts of the world, but I don't think here in Australia we've got to that point yet.